It's time for us to chat about rugby from last weekend. It was a pretty decent one for the Irish provinces, all things considered. Ulster now 2 wins from 2, same with Munster, but the weekend was overshadowed by some of the decision making off the field. The French government putting in a travel ban between France and the UK just before the weekend, which meant the 7 matches between the French and UK sides were all postponed and they're going to be rescheduled. That was despite the organisers of the competition for the Heineken Champions Cup saying in early December that the room just wasn't there in the calendar to be able to reschedule matches. Leinster and the Ospreys can feel, I think, particularly hard done by. They've taken 28-0 losses which were inflicted upon them. It's because Leinster weren't able to play against Montpellier last Friday. They've appealed against that because Montpellier were given the 28-0 win despite the fact that there were cases in both camps, and Leinster had been given permission by the Irish government to travel to France, and they've registered nearly 70 players to play in the competition, and they were saying that they had a fit squad who were COVID free that were going to be able to play, and they had a host of internationals who were in their starting 15 and felt that they could go across and win that game. So they've got their appealing currently. We're waiting to see what's going to happen on that appeal. On the field, Ulster getting a bonus point win against Northampton by 27 points to 22. Connacht led with 50 minutes gone away to Leicester, who've been flying in the Premiership but lost out 29-23. Perhaps crucially though, Jack Carty with a drop goal late on rescued a losing bonus point for Connacht. Connacht play Ulster in Kingspan Stadium this Sunday, and for Munster may have been a little bit ugly on Saturday night in their game against Cast, but coming through by 19 points to 13. Healy's boot helping them over the line in the end, and they've got 2 from 2 and are well placed to qualify from this shortened pool, and it'll be Munster against Leinster at Thomond Park on Sunday night. Delighted to say we're joined now by former Ulster and Ireland back row Stephen Ferris to have a look at what's been happening in the Champions Cup and also look forward to those games in the URC Interpros at the weekend. Stephen, how are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks for having me on. It's been a while since I've been on the show, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a good time to talk about Ulster, because Ulster shipped 30 odd points against Connacht just before the games were played in the autumn internationals, and you Dan McFarlane saying, you know, that game at the Aviva Stadium was a real low point with application and with effort from the team. But since then, like, some really good performances. It's a great start in Europe to beat Northampton and Clermont-Auvergne. They've beaten Leinster since the international break too, and are now pretty well placed to qualify for the knockout stage of the Champions Cup after that bonus point win last Friday.
Yeah, for sure. And I think after that Connacht game, I was sitting thinking to myself, geez, Ulster have a tough run of fixtures coming up, especially in the European Cup. Leinster away from home, it's going to be a real tough time, but they've bounced back, and I think that result against Connacht was maybe a wake-up call that, you got to approach every single game the same. Ulster were, good going into that game, but just didn't perform at all, and very, very disappointing. And Dan McFarlane, I'm sure, wouldn't have been happy, and they've bounced back. And how can you bounce back better than beating Clermont away from home, and then a pretty convincing display against Northampton? It was 19 points to 6 after 20 minutes. We all thought it was going to be a bit of a cricket score in the end, but Northampton didn't roll over. They have some really good players, Courtney Laws, Tom Wood, Ludlam in the back row. They're not going to roll over. So they fought hard back into the game, but Ulster just too dominant. But a few injury concerns. That's the main thing for Ulster at the minute. We know that Jacob Stockdale's out, Will Addison's still out long term, but add in Rob Balakoon from the Clermont game. Ian Henderson went off injured yet again. The Six Nations is only 6.5 weeks away. That's going to come around fast, and Ian Henderson's a big important player for Ireland and Ulster, of course. And lastly, Stuart McCluskey. Everything goes around Stuart McCluskey in an Ulster team. And when he went off the pitch, it seemed to be that Ulster lost their way a little bit, lost a bit of direction, a vocal point, like Stuart McCluskey always is. So if there's one negative to come away, it's just the build-up of injuries that, unfortunately, Ulster have accumulated.
Yeah, it puts a stress on the squad over this festive period, starting with that Connacht game this weekend. But do we write that Connacht game off at the Aviva then as one bad performance among a season? Because Ulster had started the season brilliantly, like bonus point wins in the first 4 fixtures, and then it goes wrong on that occasion. Players go off, and a large Ulster contingent in with the Irish squad for the autumn internationals. They come back off the back of that and have now played really well in the last 4 fixtures. Do we just put that Connacht game off to one bad night then?
I think we do now. If there had been a repeat of that over the last couple of weeks, then maybe you look back on it and say, right, we need to dig a little bit deeper here. You also got to remember there was 2 intercept tries. Mac Hansen, had an unbelievable game. There was only a couple of line breaks, and Connacht were really decisive and finished them off. Like Connacht against Leicester, I know we might touch on it Like, they made over 400 plus running meters in the game, made 6 line breaks, but they only scored 2 tries, and they didn't really finish Leicester off, where they seemed to do that against Ulster a number of weeks ago. So, I think, now you sort of draw a line in the sand over that result. And you move forward. And why not move forward? Because they're playing some outstanding rugby.
Yeah, I mean, look, they moved the ball around really well, which is where it's no surprise that, so many players from Ulster got called up in the summer and then got brought back in by Andy Farrell for the recent autumn internationals as well. Like, you look at players like Hume, who's really played well so far this season, like McElroy among the tries, Craig Gilroy getting a try again last weekend. Like, that's even taken Balogun not playing, Addison not playing. When all the backs are available, there's going to be some serious competition to get into that back three and into midfield for Ulster.
Yeah, there certainly is, and there's a certain Luke Marshall as well. I know he's a forgotten man. A bit like I was towards the end of my career. He's had so many injuries. He's obviously played a number of caps for Ireland. That's looking back to 6-7 years ago now, but he's still in the picture there. He's coming back from a knee injury. Plenty of options there, but it's great to see these young guys. And I was asked the question a couple of years ago about how Ulster have got to keep moving forward. You've got to give these young fellas opportunity, but it's not just 1 or 2 games here and there sporadically throughout the season. You've got to give them consistent game time at a really high level. And Tom O'Toole over the last 2 years hasn't played in that many big games. Marty Moore, has been the linchpin at tight head prop and had started so many games. And now all of a sudden you're getting young Tom O'Toole being thrown in against really good quality French opposition in Claremont. This is how these young guys learn their trade, and especially some of the young backs like Ethan McElroy has been a revelation. He really has. So solid under the high ball, good kicking game, runs really gracefully across the pitch. He's quite fast. Doesn't look it, but he's got a ton of speed. It's just giving these young fellas more and more opportunity. And if you look at Leinster, that's what they have done over the last few years. And you always talk about the strength and depth, but it's because they're getting the chance, because they're stringing 3-4 games together. Like Scott Penny, when he first came on the scene, there was a couple of injuries in the back row, and all of a sudden he started 4, 5, 6 games, started getting a few tries, started playing in a nearly a full strength Leinster team. Then he gets recognised, and that's exactly the same as what Ulster have got to do. And I think over the last kind of 6 months they've been doing that, and I think their hand has been sort of forced a little because of some of the injuries that they've had to the team to get these young fellas in, but it just shows you that the quality is there.
Well, look, ahead of Sunday's game, I think we're going to talk about 2 forgotten men in the Irish setup in John Cooney and Jack Carty, 2 former teammates who will be on opposite sides this weekend. Like, before we talk about Carty, because understandably, rave reviews the way he's played over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and again, he was so much to the fore with Connacht getting a point out of the game at Welford Road at the weekend. But how well is John Cooney playing this season for Ulster, Stephen?
Yeah, he obviously was injured at the start of the season. Young Nathan Doak has come in and played brilliantly well. Very solid, really good goal kicker. But, I think John Cooney coming back into the team, he either could have slipped off, went into his shell a little bit, throwing the toys out of the pram, that Nathan's getting, all the plaudits and his name's in the lights over the first couple of months of the season. But he didn't. He just knuckled down and got on with it, and that's a sign of a real quality, dedicated player. There's chit-chat going around that, is he going to be here at Ulster next season? I think one of the reasons why that chit-chat just continuously comes around is because he's not in the Irish setup. He hasn't been in the Irish setup for a couple of years. Yes, granted, he's been drafted in and out a few times, but he's so far down the pecking order, it seems, even though he's probably playing the best rugby, or has been playing consistently the best rugby out of the scrum halves over the last few years. I'm sure that's bound to get you down a little bit. That's bound to get on top of you. So maybe there's something, there's no smoke without fire, as we all know, that he's maybe going to disappear at some stage. It might not be this at the end of this season, but John's not going to hang around forever, and rightly so. And I'm sure a lot of clubs out there will want him. He's a quality player. He's been really good, solid rugby, brilliant goal kicker. And he's a top man for Ulster to have. And when he's in the team, he definitely makes Ulster a better side.
Yeah, for a long time. Stephen, sorry, go on, Colin.
Sorry, Will. I was just wondering, Stephen, how far can Ulster go this season in Europe? Are we looking at a repeat of 2012 in the run?
Gee, I hope you're right. I think it all depends.
Well, what would it take to get there?
Well, I think if you look back on the recent years when Ulster reached knockout games, they don't get them at home. They're always going away from home. They're always up against it. They're always underdogs. And even back in 2012, it took an unbelievable quarter-final performance against Munster away to kind of get us to that final. And like, we didn't deserve to win the European Cup that year. Leinster were by far the best team in Europe. That team was just unbelievable. And for Ulster, I think it's, kneeling down home knockout games, and Ulster don't lose too many games at the Kingspan Stadium. The crowd there, I was there at the weekend, doing a few bits and bobs. It was a brilliant packed out stadium, considering all the crack that we're having at the minute with the COVID. There was a brilliant turnout there. So yeah, Ulster just get a home knockout and just keep the momentum going, get a few of these guys back in, and you just don't know where we can go. But the expectation column is very high, is very, very high. We always know it is high. It doesn't matter if you're whatever province you play for in Ireland. But at Ulster, I think it's specifically quite high this season, considering where they're at. And Dan McFarland is in now. He hasn't just arrived. He's been there for a significant period of time. He's got all his coaching staff that he wants. He's built a squad. He's got World Cup winners and Dwayne Vermeulen there. He's other guys that he's brought in. This is his baby. This is his team. And, this is probably the season that he's going to try and get that little bit of silverware. But there's other teams that you haven't mentioned in Europe that will certainly put a fight up the Ulster.
Yeah, Connacht had to wait half a century to win a game in Belfast, but yet they've kind of got the upper hand in this fixture over the last little while, Stephen. They won 3 of the last 4 games between the sides. Connacht have been good in the last few weeks. They came off the international break playing free-flowing rugby like we saw against Ulster at the Aviva just before the international break. Got a good result, weekend 1 in the Champions Cup. And ultimately, a losing bonus point away to Leicester might still help them to get through to the knockout stages of the Champions Cup this season. The only one annoyance, I guess, for Connacht last weekend was the great position they were in with half an hour to go. Now, Leicester's bomb squad went and won enough penalties for Leicester to be able to win the game. But Connacht will probably feel that they should have closed it out when they got into such a strong position.
Yeah, it's funny, the mentality sort of shifted when the bench was unloaded. A couple of penalties, a couple of scrum decisions as well went against Connacht, but they're sitting 4th in Pool B on 6 points. They're in a really strong position. Of course, there's a couple other big hitters, that have a game in hand that are going to come charging in the next few games when their games get back on again. But I just like the brand of rugby that Connacht play. I know everybody talks about it. It's long gone the days where you go down to Connacht and you're just scrumming and mauling and kicking to the corners and hoping the weather closes in and Connacht grind out a result. They're playing some top-notch rugby, and this is the concern for me with Ulster, is that when they come up against teams that like to throw the ball around, that like to play a very similar type of game plan to them, that they can struggle a little bit more. And Connacht is certainly one of those sides. They've been a bit of a bogey team of late. And, Connacht are going to come to Belfast off the back of a brilliant result down at the Aviva Stadium against Ulster. And then just keeping a little bit of momentum going. That Jack Carty last-minute drop goal, they get the losing bonus point. It just it makes a big difference. Those small winning margins make a big difference. And Jack Carty, I know you might want to touch on him now. He's certainly in a rich vein of form. And anytime I flick on Twitter, all I see is Jack Carty in the frame for Ireland. Jack Carty putting his hand up yet again for Ireland. This has been just constant. And there is a big media drive to get him back in there. Of course there is. Why wouldn't there be? The standard of rugby that he's playing, captaining Connacht, leading by example. Are the other 10s playing as well? Harry Byrne, Ross Byrne, probably not. Billy Burns, he's just been going steady. So, it's an interesting conversation that's going to pop up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, because, look, I think Billy Burns, after last year's Six Nations, dropped down the pecking order a little bit, and it felt like the Irish coaching team made a decision at that stage that they were going in pretty heavy on Harry Byrne. But then, again, Harry Byrne's missed Leinster's last couple of games. He's not got that kind of big game experience. While the argument would be that in the here and the now, and there is a World Cup to look forward to in 2023, but Jack Carty, outside of Johnny Sexton, has been the form out half in the country. So therefore, that's him putting his hand up to actually be picked for the upcoming Six Nations, especially if Joey Carberry is going to be out for a little while with injury. We don't know how many games he's going to get before the Six Nations squad is picked. I can see why there's an argument for Jack Carty, who's been in great form for the last 8 weeks particularly, would actually get picked to come in.
Yeah, and I would have him there. I would definitely have him there. And players just want to be picked on form. And if you're playing really, really well and that door's continuously shut, it gets on top of you. I suppose the John Cooney situation is maybe slightly different, but Jack Carty has been sensational. He really has. And I think if he's put behind a really, really dominant pack, if Jack Carty was playing for Leinster every single week, would he be even better? I think he probably would. And I think he deserves a shot in the Six Nations. And is he number 2 right now? I certainly think he is. Harry Byrne, Ross Byrne. Ross is just, he doesn't make too many mistakes. He kicks his goals. He's fairly reliable. But that running game, getting that tempo up, I think Jack Carty has a little bit more. And unfortunately for me, I haven't seen enough of Harry Byrne. I think, I know Draco has been on the show a lot, singing his praises and banging the drum for him. But we just haven't seen enough of it. And, I've been commentating on games where Harry Byrne's supposed to start, and then all of a sudden he's out in the warm-up, and he maybe gets an injury 10 minutes into the game and he's off, and just a little bit unlucky here and there. So we might see a bit more of him over the Christmas period in a Leinster jersey. But for me, Jack Carty is certainly Ireland's number 2 at the minute. The way he's playing, it's brilliant to watch.
Yeah, we'll have to wait until later in the week to get the team selections for this weekend, and always with the URC. So much, Stephen, comes down to what kind of team is fielded, particularly by the away team this time of year. So it's very hard to actually make a prediction for this weekend. But are you hopeful that Ulster get a victory against Connacht, and crucially kind of keep ground with Leinster in the URC towards the top of the table as well?
Yeah, I think Ulster with the 2 home games over the next over on Boxing Day and New Year's Day. Personally, I feel that Leinster are going to come up the road with a stronger team, and they wouldn't have been happy being beaten at the RDS, but by Ulster, and probably convincingly enough in the end. Ulster were by far the better side in that game. So yeah, this is. I know we always said about Connacht, that bogey team, potential banana skin for Ulster, but at home, Christmas derby. The fans there, good atmosphere. You would expect Ulster to win this game, but I certainly feel it's going to be very, very tight, but very entertaining at the same time, because both sides like to throw it around. So, I'm going to go for an Ulster win this weekend, and I'll wait until I see the team sheet for the Ulster-Leinster game in 10 days' time.
Just on a final note before we let you go, I was just thinking this is a slight advantage Ulster are going to have over the next couple of weeks because of the nature of restrictions. Like, it's very unfortunate for Munster, Connacht particularly, who will have sold a lot of tickets ahead of the festive fixtures, that outdoor events in the Republic are now down to 5,000 for outdoor rugby. So therefore it's going to have a financial impact, Stephen, on the 3 provinces south of the border, because this was a time when they were just making a little bit of money back after 2 years of money leaking. And now these would have been fixtures where they would have sold a lot of tickets and probably brought in quite a bit of their money for the year with the Interpro derbies over the Christmas period.
Oh, lads, it's a mess. It's a mess, and it's really disappointing. And especially around the Christmas period, everybody's excited. Sometimes, as you both know, that this is the only time of the year that rugby fans might go to a game. You have your diehard fans that go every single week and support the club, whatever time of the year it is. But you have your fans that just come for the odd game over Christmas or the odd knockout game, and they're the ones that bring in the revenue. They bring in the money, and down to 5,000, the lack of atmosphere. You've heard it before about the players, about it being almost soul destroying, going out and running out to play a really important fixture, and there being nobody there, or little to nobody there, and that's hugely disappointing. Wales as well. You got to think about the other teams in the URC, the Welsh regions. There's going to be closed doors now for their games. I was chatting to Tom Shanklin about Cardiff, and they played a a game against who did they had? They had Toulouse, and the amount of money that generated for the club, it was just extraordinary, and they really needed that bit of a bump, that bit of a financial bump, and they got that. And what a great game it was too. I know Toulouse ran out worthy winners, but it was a brilliant atmosphere, and it seemed to be like rugby was back, and now all of a sudden the rug has been pulled out beneath us once again. So yeah, very, very frustrating. A little bit disheartening for me, working on the games and going to the games and commentating. I'm sure it takes away from the lads, the adrenaline, getting up for it. Like, it also takes away from me working on the games as well. So yeah, but here it is what it is at the minute. Everybody's health is the number one priority, of course, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can put this behind us and continue to move in a more positive direction.
Stephen, thanks a million for joining us on OTB AM.
Cheers, lads.
Looking forward to those games this coming weekend, of course.